Welcome to the Ed Leaders Edge podcast, where we interview innovators and thought leaders in the field of education who are helping students thrive. I'm your host, Ed Madison. I'm a professor and researcher at the University of Oregon, an educational consultant, and serve as executive director of the Journalistic Learning Initiative, a nonprofit organization that empowers elementary, middle, and high school students to discover their voice, improve academic outcomes, and become self-directed learners through project-based storytelling. Welcome to our program. All right, well, welcome back to the podcast. Kusum Sinha is superintendent of the Garden City Public Schools in Garden City, New York, which serves nearly 4,000 students. Two of the district schools have been designated by the U.S. Department of Education as Blue Ribbon Schools of Excellence. And she prides herself on the district's emphasis on learning environments and welcoming spaces. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So let's start by talking about learning environments and how did you first sort of discover the importance of learning environments?
So, the learning environment has been something that I've been interested in for a while, and we really delved deep into this in my previous experience when I was in Westchester. We did a whole, series of just professional learning around this topic. And one of the things that I think is really surprising is that, other industries have really changed, but our classrooms have sort of remained the same for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. So you have to begin to think about, it served its purpose, that type of learning environment. But we have to rethink and see how we can tailor those experiences for our kids for today. So, when we think about collaborative work, when we think about giving students the ability of voice and choice, I think space matters. And I think also for kids who need, when we're at home and we're learning or we're reading, we don't necessarily sit at a desk to do that. So it's how do you create those spaces for kids? And our kids actually give us a lot of feedback when we've created our, they'll say things like, we're calmer in this space. We love the furniture in this space. We can do more in this space. So it's kind of nice to get their feedback, the children's feedback.
Give me an idea what that looks like. So is in terms of, like, for example, seating or
Sure.
or desks?
Let me give you an example of, I'll speak about our elementary schools. Both schools, we have innovation labs. We've had this now for the past 2 years, and it was a project where we wanted to create a space where students can go within that space, be creative, think outside of the box. So it's not the same thing you're doing in the classroom, and now you're just doing it in this space. What does that space look like? First of all, the lighting, the furniture, and it's mobile furniture, the technology within that space. It looks, when kids walk in there, they feel different. They'll tell you that they feel different. So what are the kind of things they're doing in there? They're doing more project-based learning types of activities within that space. If a teacher wants to use that space to extend the learning, but that environment is more conducive, they'll use that space. So we've created those in I would say in all of our buildings. We have now teachers in their classrooms. They'll put in, we have one of our teachers, she actually does every year. Her classroom is like one of those spaces you want to go into and kind of emulate, even though she's it's at the lower level, but she's put in like this inflatable pool with pillows. That's a little reading nook. Like, how neat is that? Yeah. Or the lighting that she's put up in her classroom and spaces she's created within that larger classroom where kids know where to go to, where they're the most comfortable with whatever the learning activity might be. So we've promoted that. So it's more than just furniture. That's one of probably the most important things that we try to impart on our teachers. It's not just, you can buy all this fancy furniture. It's much, much more than that.
I've stepped into schools in Oregon that had few, if any, windows. And I just had to think, what were they thinking when they built these schools with no windows, and yet we also know that there are unfortunately communities where particularly at the high school levels, kids are coming through and having to go through metal detectors in order to enter class. And what must that do psychologically, to a child? And I understand they've done the risk analysis and figured out that that's what they have to do. But if you've got this concern, that somebody is not going to pass the metal detector test, how can you focus on learning, right?
Yeah. The schools, and we, there's no, we just had our meeting with, I have a meeting with all of our administrators really focused on school safety before the school year opens. So one of the things we've learned that there's no profile of like a district that can, that something can happen. There's no such thing as that, but there is something, I think, and I think spaces also comes into this, is we must connect with all of our students in our districts, right? There has to be a connection where when our children come through those doors, they know they belong here, that they're cared for, and that no matter what's going on, that in this space that we're here for you. And I think that is probably the if that's probably our most important aspect of schooling before we can teach. Those connections are really important. And I think once you connect with kids, no matter how bad things are, they know that this is a safe place for them. So we work that's one of the things I'm probably the most proud of in Garden City, is that what we do, our educators, our administrators, our staff, it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're a clerical person or, your custodial staff, you have to connect with kids. You have to smile, say hello. These things are important aspects of that whole safety piece, because kids if they have a sense of belonging and they see this as their home, they're going to be okay.
Now, I know that you also pride yourself with actually getting to know the students. I would dare say that there's probably a lot of districts where the students don't have any idea who the superintendent is or what they do. And they'll tell you, you've said that we need bike racks or whatever it is. I mean, how do you continue to foster that sort of close relationship with the kids that you serve?
So one thing is you have to show up, right? So you have to show up. So what does that mean? Like, you go to school events, you go into the buildings, you take note of things that children have, accomplished. And it's not just academic, even being nice. So kids do know me because I'm in the buildings a lot. I do try to go into the classrooms as much as I can, athletic events, concerts. So kids get to see me. And so it's kind of nice now when especially the little ones, when they see me outside of their building, they'll say, "Oh, you work here too?" Because they see me as I work in their buildings.
Right.
So it's kind of nice. And I do have focus groups. I meet with we have two elementary school, a middle school, high school. I do meet with student groups on a regular basis. So to get really to learn from them what experiences they value here and what they would like to, what they would like us to do more of. So, I gave you that example of the bike rack. We have one of our buildings where students ride their bikes. And the kids said, like, we have nothing we end up putting our bikes on the ground. And so, and they were right. So what did we do? We built a nice bike rack for them, and we actually made it even bigger. So kids, they ride their bikes. I love it. Love that they
Yeah.
ride. So it's like, what are those? And it's something little, but kids don't forget that they've been heard. Or when I'm meeting with them and they ask for, books, certain series that they want more of, or we don't have enough of, they love the fact that we now have purchased it because they said that this was very, very helpful to them. So we've used our student voices to make changes within our schools in a good way. So, because we want them to know this is your home for, 6.5, 7 hours. So we want to make sure that your voices are, that you're part of creating our school environment.
And the next word that comes to mind is creating a climate or a culture within the school. And I know I had read somewhere that the book Trust and Inspire, Stephen Covey. I think you had a book group that kind of looked at that book. How do you go about creating a positive culture within this district?
I think the positive culture comes from like honoring, right? You have to honor your people here, and you have to model. So um, that positive. I mean, I'll be very honest with you. I was blessed to come to this district where there was such a strong commitment to teaching and learning here, and you have to creating that positive culture. It's always a work in progress. You cannot say we're at the top of our game because that requires you as a leader to be constantly seeing ways that you're bringing people into the fold, whether it's around decisions you're making, or in your team you have like there's so much talent, you don't know it all, so you harness those talents and you honor those talents and you allow them, just like with kids, we want to give them voice and choice. Well, how do we give that same thing with our adults, the voice and choice?
Yeah,
And one of the things we do that I you're never, like I said, at the top of your game because we're a large organization, but getting to know people, getting to know them, whether it's, if someone has gotten married, I will send a little note because it's your family is growing. And so you want to acknowledge that because we're in the business, our business in teaching and learning, we work with big people and we work with little people. It's people.
and you had a young person play at Carnegie Hall. I saw
Oh,
on.
yeah. I mean,
How
it's
old was
amazing.
he?
Oh my goodness, the he was in what grade is he? He's going into third grade. He's like a unbelievable, right? Unbelievable. But we've had several students. We have a student that played who is a child with a disability with autism. He did unbelievable the opportunities, but it's always harnessing those moments and celebrating it. Like when you can celebrate these, and acknowledge that student that you're speaking of, the second grader. He's an amazing artist. This kid, amazing artist.
Yeah,
When he was in first grade, I would always say, "Show me what you drew. Let me see your artwork." Like, so you know, kids remember these types of interactions. Our
yeah,
children, and but we have amazing kids here and amazing parents that really
yeah.
cultivate this. The joy of following their passions. So this kid is the one that you're speaking of. Is truly, he's a pianist, gifted.
Let's step away from our conversation for a moment for me to tell you about the Journalistic Learning Initiative's innovative educational tools and services. If you're looking to make the best decision for your teaching staff and students about AI adoption, improving student engagement, strengthening writing skills, promoting social media mindfulness, or enhancing college and career readiness, please take a moment to visit our website at journalisticlearning.org. Our team of University of Oregon researchers offer customized AI tools, instructional materials, professional development, and consulting. Research confirms that students with journalistic learning experience outperform their peers on numerous key indicators for college and career readiness. At the heart of our work is empowering learners to become effective communicators. If you think about it, effective communication is critical in every human interaction, whether it's writing an essay for a grade or being interviewed to secure employment. Since 2015, JLI has benefited nearly 20,000 students and served schools in 15 states and the District of Columbia. I invite you to schedule an appointment to explore how JLI can improve your students' learning outcomes. Now back to our program.
Totally
Yeah,
gifted.
yeah.
Yeah.
Language and literacy means so much more now than it did maybe 20, 30 years ago. I know that you've also got students engaged in creating podcast episodes and
Yes.
doing media. Tell me more about that.
So, when you think about the skills our kids are going to need, the ability to create and to use their voice, and there's a heavy emphasis now on even oral language, right? That's part of, in New York State, it's part of one of the areas they've added. So podcasts I mean, everybody loves to listen to a podcast. Who wouldn't love to listen to our kids? So last year, with the support of like one of our assistant principals, she's amazing. I said to her, "Go, Lauren, would you join me in helping me do some of these podcasts?" And mine was like, if I saw something in the district that I think the community would love to learn more about from our kids, that let our kids have that voice of sharing, not me sharing and not the adults sharing, but have the kids share. So the kids, it's been, I've enjoyed that, but we've gone beyond that, where in our, we talked about the spaces, but in our elementaries, our middle school, high school, our kids are doing podcasts. There's a topic that they want to delve deeper into. They do that. They create morning news announcements, which has been very, very well received. Because then what happens is you have these newscasts, and now, in each of the classroom, they're playing it on their, with a live feed, real time. That's pretty neat for these
Yeah.
kids to see their peers sharing, you know, uh, the good things that have occurred that week. So that's something we do promote, and we've created spaces in our libraries. We have we've created it like at our middle school. We have a whole podcast studio we've built. Why? Because we want our kids to use it, and we want them to be comfortable using their voice.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes we don't. We need to do more of that
Hmm.
in our schools.
How are your thoughts about just maybe too much screen time, and and the concerns that many parents and educators have about just sort of the unfettered access to mobile devices? And is there a policy there in the district, or how do you?
You know what we have? I'll share this with you. We do have a lot of our parents, our younger parents, that are really concerned, and I think concerned about children's screen time. And I think the book, The Anxious Generation by John Haidt, that book, it was published just earlier this year in March. And his book is that it's backed by a lot of research. So what we did, working with the PTA, I said, and this came to me by parents really talking about, the amount of technology that kids are using, and we've made, when COVID came, everything was technology, right? And some of those practices, you have to go back and say, do we still need to do that? Because technology is a tool. It's not the it thing, right? It's a tool. So we've made some changes for this school year, like our kids in, our elementary kids, they were taking Chromebooks home. They're not. They're not going to be taking it home. It's going to stay in school. But if they need it to do an assignment, then they'll bring it home. But it's not going to
Mhm.
be going home every day. And things, if there are better alternatives for kids, we'll do that. But when we talk about screen time, it really is, or what John Haidt talks about in the Anxious Generation, is around social media,
Mhm.
the phones,
Mhm.
the games. And these are things that as a society we have to work on. So we started one book, one district initiative in our district.
Mhm.
We had our first session, a book discussion on this book. And, we do have it on our website. I created a section that's just for this. I had about, I would say, over 75 parents who participated in August. That's pretty neat. That's a lot of parents. And so there's a high interest, and we're going to have our second book discussion. We actually have a student who created this artwork, not this past year, it was the year before, unbelievable, that I actually sent to the author. I said, you got to take a look at this artwork because it speaks to the book. So the screen time, it's not around so much the work, it's more around like giving your kids, like if the kids, like I see when you go to restaurants and everybody's on a device,
Right.
that's not healthy.
Yeah.
They've talked a lot about the correlation between addiction and now it's and screen time, right? But screen time meaning playing games, video games, that's highly, highly addictive. Social media, Instagram is highly addictive. And we actually talked about it at our last book discussion. Would we take our kids and drop them off on Times Square and just leave? We wouldn't do that. But that's what, in essence, we're doing when we
Right.
give them a phone, a smartphone, with the internet, that's the whole world in their pockets, and telling them that they're ready to handle that. They really are not developmentally ready. So he really talks about even when you should, kids shouldn't have access to those things till they're in high school. When
Yeah.
their middle school years are still developing and difficult times, and when they're younger, they just don't know, you know. So I like that we've done that here. I'm glad
Yeah.
we're doing that here. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't let you go without asking you about AI and
Yeah.
and what are your thoughts and what are you seeing and are you implementing any programs or anything
Yeah.
there?
So AI, I go back, that AI is here to stay. So it's not going anywhere, right? So in education, we have to look at it in two folds. One is, how are we teaching kids to use a tool responsibly that they have access to, right? I think many years ago when and I say this because I, as an educator, when social media and all came out, we didn't do enough to teach our kids about, it was almost like, we weren't proactive in teaching our kids. With I think you have to be, as a system, you have to be out there teaching kids and teachers and administrators on the proper uses of AI. And it's a tool. And there's AI all around us, by the way,
Right. Yeah.
well before ChatGPT came out and all,
Right.
right? So what we have done in our district, I mean, just yesterday, our school officially, our superintendent's conference days on Thursday. Yesterday, we had one of the technology PDs. There were over 100 teachers that participated, virtual. But in our district, we have been very focused on providing professional development for our teachers. And it's not a one shot and you're
Sure.
done. It's
Sure.
it's the PD followed by coaching,
Sure.
followed by giving them some proper ways to use the tool. So we also have a platform, an AI platform that we have in our district that we teachers are using, and we teach our kids how to use those platforms. And
Yes.
it goes back to this term, integrity is important. You
Hmm.
have to use technology with integrity,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So we have to teach that to our kids,
Yeah.
because these tools are here, but they have to know how to use it. And there are purposeful ways. I mean, we did we had some of our alums that came back to talk about, how did we prepare them well enough
Right.
for college?
Right.
And with some of the kids we're talking about, like, they use AI as like, if they can't understand a concept, they can drill deep in asking questions on, help me to better understand it.
Well, yes. I mean, I think that one of the positive upsides of AI is that it's democratizing tutoring. It used to be you'd have to be affluent in order to afford a tutor, and now you have
Yeah.
access to a tool that can give you
Yeah.
that kind of personalized instruction. And our organization's been doing work around CTE, career
Uh,
exploration. So we created a tool that the state of Oregon, all the schools have adopted. That's where kids can go in and say what they're interested in, and it'll tell them, how many years they need to prepare, what colleges within their community offer degrees in that in that area that they want to explore, and the whole thing. So I'll get
And
you
they
some.
do say, like, it personalizes
Yes,
learning. But when you
right.
look at AI, and if you look at the World Economic Forum report and
Yeah,
future jobs, that those reports, there are many, many millions of jobs that will be um, displaced, and
yeah,
new jobs are coming up
right,
because of these tools.
right.
So when you think about automation, we used to worry about automation in a different way.
Yeah,
There's a lot of jobs that are are are, are AI will sort of
yeah,
take over,
yeah.
but you
But
still need the skills that we bring to the table that
context,
AI, yeah, they can't. So
right,
you still have to teach kids that, the information you get, is it accurate? The critical thinking skills,
right.
right? But kids still need that. So
Yeah,
there's, I mean, thank goodness, like, in our work, in our field, if we don't keep up with what's happening in advances in society, we're not doing right by our kids then,
yeah.
so that's
Well,
important.
Well, let's leave it on that note. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we had this time to chat. And thanks for all the great work you're doing for students there.
Thank you, and thanks for having me again.
The Ed Leader's Edge podcast is produced by the Journalistic Learning Initiative. Please check out our latest books, Language Arts in Action from W.W. Norton Publishing, and Raising Empowered Learners from Rauman and Littlefield. For more information about our work, please visit journalisticlearning.org or edleaderedge.org. Thanks for listening.